Can you say that in the recording thing? All right, I think it's working.
Yep, we should be good.
Okay, all right. So welcome to the Warrant Committee on October 4th. And so here in person, we have Jeremy, Newton, Steve, myself, Ed, Bob, and Christine. And then Amanda and Jill, if you guys can both just announce yourselves and say that you're participating remotely, that'd be great.
Sure, Amanda Hall, participating remotely.
And Jillian Raptor participating remotely.
Awesome. Cool. All right, thank you guys. So we're going to jump around in what I had said we were going to do for the minutes so that we can give Nick his night back. So we're going to start first with the financial policies. So we're just tossing it right to Nick.
No, I think
Or do you wanna go?
we were leaving it, we had received some comments from people. I think we're kind of leaving it to the committee to give us any comments or feedback so that we can take it back to the selectmen and work on a final, semi-final draft.
Okay. Do you guys want, so I know that a few of you at least had some comments. Do you want to just kind of run through them and then we can get general
Sure, I won't,
consensus?
I'll skip all the edits, but they have them,
We do have them.
capital here, anyway. So
We
one
love
of
those.
the major thing that I wanted to put in was in Roman numeral 2A1, the capital budget, and at least in my copy, it carries over, but it talks about committees responsible for reviewing all the estimates, and at the end of that section, there's a sentence where it says, the capital budget committee shall provide a rationale for each of the proposed expenditures, including included within the 5-year capital budget. I added the phrase "and its priority relative to other requests." This is not well thought through, but I thought that the capital budget committee should be tasked with developing a prioritization process. It may be some sort of priority statement here. My reference was the MMA financial handbook, financial committee handbook that provided several different characteristics of what evaluation criteria might be. And I thought that the policy could call some of those out for the capital budget committee to thereby prioritize, having flexibility, thereby prioritize its projects. I can circulate to everyone the sort of criteria that the handbook lists out, but some obvious things, and maybe these are implicit in the committee's process, but risks to public safety or health required by federal or state law, deteriorated facilities, systematic replacement, improvement of operating efficiency, coordination of projects, equitable provision of services and facilities, protection and conservation of resources, enhancement to economic development program. So that was one. In that same section, there was a statement that in case of an emergency that could not have been anticipated, if funds are available within the capital budget. So I had a full stop there. Capital budget doesn't have any funds, and I think there should be some reference to the capital stabilization fund. Anyway, so my specific comment that I sent to you, Christine, Nick, and Sharon, capital budget doesn't have funds, the stabilization fund does, which would need 2/3 vote at town meeting for appropriation. Okay. Again, in section 2, capital building maintenance plan, I call out the fact that, well, the statement is sentence, the plan will include estimates. And I say, hey, why not priorities as well? In the next paragraph of that same number 2 paragraph, talks about the permanent building committee. This may be a little redundant, but it says the 20-year capital plan will be submitted to the board of selectmen for approval. This submission will include an analysis of the impact of the committee's recommendation that will have on long-term debt, et cetera. I was thinking that, and maybe this is too redundant, that analysis should be explicitly the responsible of the PPDC. So the analysis of the permanent
It's a tongue twister.
building committee of its impact, of its recommendation, something of that nature. Just tagging them with the responsibility. In letter B, I think Roman numeral 2, the municipal buildings capital stabilization fund, paragraph 1 and paragraph 3 are pretty redundant. I think they could be melded into one, and that third paragraph probably dropped. They both talk about town meeting having approved it and $1 million of funds having been provided. Whichever is the more, fulsome disclosure should be kept. There's a definition of reference to the municipal facilities evaluation capital plan. I was thinking that we should identify that as, I think, the 2017 evaluation capital plan, because it's not being maintained anymore. It's under, I think, a new name. Whatever is developed by the director of facilities. I'm not sure it's a new name, but that one that keeps being referenced was 2017, unless it's a living document. Then just the first paragraph, the last paragraph, right above the letter C, capitalization funds, I think is an old reference to, it needs the word municipal and defining capital stabilization. Okay. There's a note in C in the second paragraph, note approval of withdrawal of these funds. Excuse me. Just above C, there is a note, parenthetical note, approval requires 2/3 in the municipal building stabilization fund appropriation. I was thinking that capital stabilization fund should have that same 2/3 appropriation. So just copy that down with the appropriate fund name. Then in reserves, I think it was in the second paragraph, we finally define what the reserves are. Free cash stabilization. So my style would be to call that out first, so that 3A begins reserves, and I brought the sentence forward. Reserves shall include funds available in free cash, other reserve accounts, and stabilization fund, but excluding municipal fund, and then go on to the goal of these reserve accounts is to just stylistic. Free cash, here's a big one. First paragraph, the town strives to, but the town shall maintain a free cash balance of 2.5% expenditures. In the DLS document, I think you circulated that to us, Christine, about free cash dated February 2016. It says the Technical Assistance Bureau tab recommends that communities understand the role free cash plays in sustaining a strong credit rating, encourages them to adopt policies on its use. So here's the kicker. Under sound financial policies, a community strives to generate free cash in an amount equal to 3 to 5% of its annual budget. So thinking that was sound, prudent financial policy and something that we could aspire to, I begin the paragraph, whereas the town strives to generate free cash in an amount equal to 3 to 5% of its annual expenditures, the town shall maintain a free cash balance of at least 2.5%. And I know that one is a debatable point. And finally, in the overlay section, this may be redundant. I end the last sentence that reads, the Board of Selectmen requests that assessors vote to declare those balances surplus and available for use by the town to fund one-time expenses transferred to stabilization funds or to free cash. That's it.
Anybody else?
I have just a minor. If you could better explain to me in the section, it's under capital expenditures, capital budget, the very last paragraph, that section before you get to number 2, capital building. They're talking about the emergency, unanticipated capital expenditures. And if this were to be funded, the department would have to pay that back through their expense budget in the subsequent years.
Right.
If it's a capital item,
Not sure how that works.
it's a capital
I
item. It's not, you
So when
can't
I,
pay for
when I read your
capital.
comment in today and I went back and read it, I have to talk to Selectman Marcucci because I know he wrote that section and I'm not sure exactly what he meant by that. So let us review that with him. We'll get back to
I
you.
think I have an example in my head of what he probably meant.
That- I
by
think I do
that.
too, but I didn't want to speak for him, but go ahead.
Well, just going back a year or two on the capital budget, like there had been a time and I'm thinking about the van
Right,
that got bought by Park and Rec. That was like, they had used their revolving fund to buy a van at one point and it didn't go through the capital budget, but they had the revolving fund and they had the ability to use that. That was, when I
But
read
you
that,
can
that's
do
what
that.
popped
You
in my
can
head.
do that. I read that. Yeah, you can pay for things out of your revolving fund.
correct.
Your
as
capital.
long as
Right.
So
they're in the
that's,
capital
that's
plan.
okay.
Right, but I don't
If you
think,
can
well,
do it.
and I honestly don't know if that van purchase I'm thinking about was before we had a capital
It was
plan.
long before.
Yeah.
Right, so like, that was the only thing that stuck out in my head was that like, somebody did
Yeah.
something like that. So I mean, I can't speak from, when I read that, that's what I thought of.
Yeah.
We'll get a clarification from the
Yeah,
selectman on that.
okay. The only other minor thing is on the next one, under 2, capital building maintenance, 1, 2, 3rd paragraph down. It says, it is the intention of this policy that expenses included in the 20-year capital plan, et cetera. There are no expenses in the capital plan. I think you want to say capital expenditures.
Expenditures.
And you have that same issue, couple of paragraphs down, on the paragraph that begins with municipal building stabilization fund is authorized to fund expenses. As long as we say capital expenditures, we're keeping apples to apples.
Okay.
And there may be other places that I missed with that. Pops up. Oops, not really yet. And what is, I never got section H parentheses B. Is
It's
that-
2, it should be 2. Roman numeral 2.
Oh,
Was that one of your typos that you didn't run through? Yeah. there you go.
okay. Thanks.
I had one thing that maybe we could talk about. So on the financial forecast,
Mhm.
I thought we could add something that says, starting with the fiscal year FY 23. The town shall annually prepare a 3-year forecast of revenues and expenditures for the general fund using appropriate assumptions. And then this forecast will be updated yearly as part of the annual budget process. So not for this, not, so as we go into the next budgeting cycle, that would sort of be something we would sort of start, but I guess it's up for discussion. That was my suggestion.
I feel like that's been a goal for a long time, and
Yeah, I think
so
we've been talking about it for a while and then.
maybe if we write it, it forces us to do it.
It's in the charter.
Yeah,
It's just not as detailed in the charter.
Yeah, when I looked, it looked like it just talked about expenditures, but I could have not been looking in the wrong place, but.
I agree.
So that was, I don't know, that's something to,
We can take it back to them.
take it back to them.
Yeah. I think we should have a 3-year plan, roll it out there, but I don't think it should be part of the financial policy to have it. Quite frankly, I'm afraid of is when you do that, once you get out into year 3, it really, the crystal ball gets increasingly cloudy.
Sure.
And
I mean, the same happens with capital as well, but you take your best.
well,
Yeah.
capital's a little bit
Like,
more.
The reason I came up with it is in the DLS, financial policy,
And,
document.
Christine's
It's not-
point actually is in the charter as well.
Yeah,
You have a 5-year point
Right.
stated. in the
I think we
charter.
should
So there is a
definitely-
reference.
I think
to
we
the
do
charter
need
to
it.
be included in with the financial
Yeah.
policies for revenues expense forecast for the general fund operating budget.
so I think you get into the problem though. Once you go out into even year 2 and 3, you're gonna say, all right, here's my expense structure. Here's my assumptions on revenue, 2.5% here and new growth, et cetera. And you see this deficit. Now you start saying, how can I present that deficit? Now, we haven't even get into the detail yet, because we have to solve that deficit in year 2 and 3. So what, if we're putting that out in year 1, when we're presenting the current budget that does eventually balance, it's like doing 3 budgets at once.
Right.
And I don't know, I just think I think we should do it. I absolutely think we should do it,
Some
but
look at the budget in outer years.
I mean,
yeah,
Maybe
and
not
then-
as detailed as the current budget, but it's not a bad idea to have a look at the budgets. for-
oh, I absolutely agree. We should have
Big
it.
items.
I just don't know what, I absolutely should have it, review it and know what's coming down the pike.
Right,
But-
better than being surprised.
Oh, absolutely.
We don't need
Negligent
to
not to
solve,
have.
we don't need to solve those problems though,
Yeah.
In the current year.
yeah, right?
I concur with
It's-
Steve.
But it's nice to know they're
Something to
there.
look at.
Oh, I know.
It's,
You
sort of
have to
like,
know,
you
you have to
know,
know it's there.
like to know where the rattlesnake is in the
Yeah.
grass, you know. So anyway, that was my thought, is that we should at least try to
We'll take it back.
work that.
Sharon, I have to, I forwarded on to.
Yep, I have.
Sharon. You know, we talk about reserves and there is a bit of a definition of reserves, but it's more about what's not a reserve than what is a reserve. We might want to be really explicit on what is the reserves and define that clearly in the policy. This.
ABC.
You know, that general term reserves can be subject to debate. There was that section on, in the case of emergency, they could not have been avoided, anticipated, repaying through the department's operating budget in future years. I question that, mention that. We talk about the need on the capital plan itself, that the funding source should be identified. I think the policy should also explicitly state that all items, regardless of their funding source, should be on the plan to begin with. So, you know, thinking of things that might be purchased from a revolving fund. Sure, that's a revenue source that is available for departments, but if it's a capital item, it should be on the list before purchase.
Agreed.
There is a bit of a discussion in the policy, which I think is great, about if there are alternative budgets presented in the warrant report, that the impact on the town's financial policies must be discussed. Maybe there's an opportunity to include something about things that may not be in the warrant report, but are brought up at town meeting floor to change the budget. Is there any mechanism that those requests on town meeting floor need to be vetted or information provided to be consistent with financial policy?
So was there some language in there on that?
There-
Not
there-
in regards to town meeting.
No,
Okay, okay.
I've been spending the afternoon thinking about that since I got your comment,
Yeah,
and I need to think about that a little more.
yeah.
Because I don't think you can require somebody who's speaking at town meeting floor and making a motion to change it to be able to provide that information on the
They wouldn't
fly.
have it, right?
Yeah, they're not
but
gonna have it, and I don't
Is there
wanna,
something that could be triggered then at town meeting that, you know, the administration?
Yeah, I
helps
think
get that
we-
information.
yeah, I think we'd be-
Pause at town meeting or something.
my guess is, well, I guess it could go either way. I was thinking of it in the aspect that if somebody made a motion to, increase our, reduce our reserves, but I'm thinking the other way,
It could go the
people
other
could
way as
go, it
well.
could go the other way as well,
Yeah.
so I hadn't thought about this, what you're talking about, so let me think more about how we would do that logistically. Yeah,
Um,
but I would say 9 times out of 10, if somebody's doing that, we're gonna end up not meeting our reserves if somebody's making changes to
Right.
increasing budgets.
But be able to call out fairly quickly. and
Right, what the
concisely
change is.
That it doesn't meet the town's financial policy may help address that motion.
Mhm.
at town meeting. There is a short discussion on the water and sewer enterprise funds and their reserves, how they're separately calculated. It's related to the overall budget financial picture. There is a significant revenue coming from the enterprise funds to the general fund by way of the indirect expenses. It seems that should be in our policy or a policy on how those indirect expenses are calculated. So that it's transparent, it's clear, we know where that's coming from, is it accurate? And at the end, there's a section on OPEB, which it has a starting number, and then says the financial policies there's a goal to increase 5% per year. Goal seems a little soft, in my opinion. Maybe we should consider shall or something a little bit more, some more teeth in it until it's fully funded. And then just thinking about, we've gotten requests or, other folks outside residents have done their own calculations on the status of our reserves and meeting our financial policy. Maybe it would be helpful to actually have a calculation, a sample calculation as an.
That was gonna be my
Appendix.
question. Are we gonna have an appendix?
Sort of a
We
pro
have it,
forma.
Okay.
we have it attached, it didn't get sent to you, but we do have that attached as part of it. Yes.
Beautiful.
It's gonna be like an
And
exhibit.
that does
exhibit.
go out the 5 years also, so you can see what we're looking at.
Yeah, it was
the
in
5
mine.
year.
I
I sent it to you, yeah,
Okay.
but it is in there, so you'll be able to see it,
I
yeah.
was gonna say, I think I saw one flash in front of me on paper, but. then-
Yes.
Okay.
No, we have it.
Okay.
Okay, sure.
All right. Does anybody else have any other?
Just one more thing is when Jeremy was talking, that 20% maintaining a reserve balance in the enterprise accounts of 20%. What happens in the year in which you can't do that? It falls below the 20%. Should there be any words in here saying what the next step is?
And
That
I think
requires,
There's a little, not gray
That
area, but
requires-
there
Yeah.
is the Board of Water and Sewer, they're responsible for setting the water rates and generating revenue.
right,
So they have some responsibilities in the mix, so I think that's probably why it's a little light
Yes,
on that here.
because they have
but-
the responsibility for that. And we're working on them on updating all of their financial policies for the enterprise fund. For the year 2 project.
But in my opinion, that revenue that comes to the general fund by the indirects, it's a big number, so I might be.
So Jeremy, and your question on the OPEC.
OPEC, yeah.
OPEC, yeah, increase, it was, I think it's 5% increase annually, is that what it said?
It's
you-
the
it
goal
was- it
is
used
to
to,
increase
yeah.
by 5%.
It was 10, and then we
Was
dropped it to
10,
5 based
dropped to
on,
5.
yeah.
I
But
guess
you'd
my
like to
question
make it-
is, quote, goal, is that a strong enough word?
Or the word goal?
Word goal?
Increasing like shall increase 5%.
Shall.
I mean, the thing, is, we didn't do it a couple of years ago.
correct,
I like goal
Yeah.
of flexibility.
in 2020. we was not.
Yeah, we have a lot of hard and fast rules. I like goal. Because you need to give yourself some flexibility. I mean,
Well,
that's so far in the
the
funding.
policy gives the board of selectmen and the warrant committee flexibility in that if you aren't going to meet the financial policy like we did in 21, and we didn't put it in, then you have to explain why.
Right.
Right.
And tell them,
And
you
then
have
town
to explain
meeting.
it in the warrant, or you have to explain,
But we didn't.
yeah, this is why.
Well, then maybe shall, okay. Do shall.
Yeah, well, I'll take it back to both of them. and talk to them. They're still talking about the OPEB section, so. there'll be some
How did they
follow-up.
come up with the 500?
So it originally, when we did the policy back in 2018, I believe it started at 425.
Yeah,
And then it was the 10%. And this year, Selectman Markucci dropped it to 500. It would have been a 514 if we did the 10%.
okay.
So we set the 500 as the bar for the new policy. Or updated policy.
Does anybody else have any questions on the financial policy?
So all these are going to be compiled,
We'll-
maybe a new draft.
We'll have a
issued.
new draft. The selectmen will talk about, we'll send them some of the comments that have come in. We'll send that off to them. They'll have some more discussion and we're hoping to have it in place. And at least the selectmen vote on it by the 19th and then we'll send it off to you.
So then we can deal with it in January, because none of us are gonna want to meet again after.
I'm trying to get this to a meeting to you before you all leave me in December.
Too funny. Okay, cool. All right. So, Nick, I think that you're being released back to your evening. So, thank you for joining us.
Good night.
Okay,
Nick,
all right. Why don't we do the first couple, I think we have 2 sets of minutes.
I know.
I know, where is it? I think we have 2 sets of minutes, right?
I sent around mine very late.
I saw that, yeah.
And they were
Did people get a
already
chance to
edited.
look at Newton's yet? If not, we can do those
I
next time.
looked at.
Yeah, okay. All right, and then Jill's minutes went out last night too. So the 2 sets of minutes we have and the dates are. My mind's not working super great today. The 23rd, I believe, was the date of
Bill's minutes.
Jill's minutes, and the date of Newton's minutes were the 28th,
Right,
right?
that's right.
So, does anybody have any comments or questions on the minutes from the 23rd? How about the minutes from the 28th? We good with those two? Alrighty, we could probably just vote on them together then. Someone have a motion?
I move that the minutes of the Warrant Committee meeting of the September 23rd, 2021, and the meeting of September 28th, 2021 be approved as submitted.
Second.
All right. So, yes, obviously.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
Yes,
And then Amanda
Yes,
and Jill.
Yes.
Okay, I'm a yes too. So then we have minutes. All right. So before we dive into the Q&A, I guess I have two quick things to say about it. The Q&A is very long. And so for those at home that are watching, if you want to read along with us, they are posted as materials attached to the agenda. So if you want to, you can go to the agenda center, you can click on tonight's agenda and it has all of this Q&A there. But before we dive into it, I just wanted to make a public apology to Erin Watson, who is a teacher over at the Wheelock School. She had wanted to come to our meeting with the educational program that we had, and she had sent me an email earlier that day and had asked me to read it on her behalf, and I unfortunately did not see it before the meeting, so I told her that I would read it tonight. So I'm going to do that real quick. So again, this is from Erin Watson. It says, speaking as a longtime Wheelock school teacher, 26 years, I'm excited for the Dale Street students and staff for the opportunity to have a new building. I was invited to early meetings years ago as a third grade teacher representative when they were still deciding what the configuration of the school would be, 3-5 or 4-5. I was impressed by the work of the committee and the experts who shared their knowledge of the design ideas. When the configuration decision was made, Wheelock representatives no longer went to these meetings. The staff of Dale Street continued on with parents, community members, administrators, etc. There was recently a post on the Dale at Dale site on Facebook that shared a part of an email referring to a letter in support of Dale at Wheelock signed by many teachers. The email states, quote, the letter was not endorsed by, nor does it represent the view of the Medfield Teachers Association, unquote. And that is true. We have not pulled our entire rank and file to get their input. It does not affect teachers at the other schools unless they live in town and are taxpayers. But it specifically mentioned that the building reps for Dale Street did not sign the letter. Having spoken with the building reps this week, they shared with me that they did not sign the letter because they do not live in Medfield. They have no problem with either option and would be happy at either site. It was not because they were against Dale moving to Wheelock site. As a teacher at Wheelock, I don't expect to have input into a school that I will not be working and teaching in. This does not mean I don't have thoughts or opinions about where the school should be. As a teacher, my first instinct is to ask, what would be best for kids? And I honestly think that is building at the Wheelock site. Trying to build on the Dale Street location while teaching and learning there would be extremely hard for students and staff. After the past few years and the repercussions of COVID, I would hope trying to alleviate these interruptions would be a priority. I think the kids deserve it. As an educator, I also like the idea of having a campus school here and having shared staff and space. I think there are a lot of advantages to that. The design utilizes open space in new ways that would benefit both schools of students. I would like to clarify that I think that the email that was posted was a tactical move on the part of the Dale at Dale campaign to make the voting public think that teachers are afraid to voice their opinions. That is not the case. I am currently the new president of the Medfield Teachers Association, and I am not speaking on behalf of the union. I am speaking on behalf of myself, a longstanding teacher in this town who hopes that people will take this into consideration. Signed, Erin Watson. So I apologize again for being behind on my email. And so I think that potentially, I know we don't have the minutes yet for the teacher meeting, but since she had asked for it to be requested, I was thinking that maybe we should attach it to those minutes when we get to those. So I think we'll probably have those minutes for next week. Okay, so I guess to give everybody a little bit of background of what we're gonna try to read through and talk about as needed is that thankfully, I guess people use the Warrant Committee medfield.net email address to ask questions. This is a compilation of questions that went there. Some questions came into my personal email address, either before or after we had it set up. So I wanted to have those included. And then we also included, there was questions that were typed into the Q&A on our meeting on the 13th of September that we ran out of time answering. So those are in here. And then at least one of these was from the Dale at Dale session we had on the 9th. That was basically something that asked us to follow up on something. So I put that in here. So I think that for the most part, I've asked Steve if he'll kind of go back and forth with me on these, so I'm not sitting here talking for an hour and a half.
It's a lot for one person.
I did bring a water and I did bring chocolate, so I might eat some chocolate while Steve is talking. We'll see how that goes. And so, but I think, Steve, that what we'll do is, because basically everything that goes into the warrant committee email address is public information, so it's similar to standing up and giving feedback at a public forum where you have to state your name and your address. So I think that we'll read that and when it came through. And I think in some cases we may paraphrase and in some cases we won't. I think it will just kind of depend on the question. So and then I'll just kind of like look up at you guys in case you want to talk about them.
When you say this answer, each individual has been answered.
They have not been answered yet. So this is, as I kind of put on the bottom, it's a draft working copy. So what, if someone already received a partial answer, that's in here, the rest of them are not. So what the plan or the thought process is that we'll walk through these tonight. And then if anybody here has anything that they think we should add or edit into the answer, we'll put that into there. And then it should be pretty easy enough for me to go back into the warrant committee email and copy and paste these and send them to those people and let them know that we went through it tonight, because that was, at least
Then the
everybody
Final version of this
will be posted. I think that what we'll do is, because what I had said to Newton on the minutes is that for the most part, this is going to be the minutes minus whatever else we might add, so that Newton doesn't feel like he has to retype this.
Here's the link.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that that's exactly what we'll do. So,
Yes.
right.
Yeah.
And I know that some of you have participated in these answers. A lot of these answers are links to different meetings where we ask these questions for people. So I was not interested in trying to re-paraphrase what somebody else told as the answer. I think people should just go and see it themselves.
Yeah.
That was the intent too, right?
Right, well, that was the intent, because some of these questions, when we get to them.
Source documents wherever possible.
Right. So that there are some in here where there's more verbiage that when we get to those, like some of these emails we sent to Mike Quinlan and asked him for answers and he provided
Yeah.
responses. And I did send this to Mike Quinlan yesterday and asked him to read it because I didn't want him to be misquoted anywhere. So he blessed this as we did not misquote him. So, and hopefully he still agrees with that after we've finished. Okay, so with all of that being said, oh, and then I do want to say, anybody out there that has more questions, I am going to actually set a deadline of this Thursday to send questions that you expect to have answered, because as much as I love in my heart to help all of you, it needs to end at some point. So if people want to send emails up until end of day on Thursday this week, that will give us 1 week to be able to get more answers before we finish this on the 14th. So does that sound okay for everybody? All right, so with that being said, so the first one on the list is from August 21st from Chris McHugh Potts at 7 Kirk Street. This was simply a suggestion to add the master planning information to our fact documents. And she provided 2 links. Both of those were added to the website on the first night that we did that. And I'm gonna let you do the next one because you know
Okay.
the field answer.
So the next question is from Susan Buckley at 60 Millbrook Road, sent in on August 27th. Warrant Committee, I've attended several building committee minutes via Zoom. While I agree a new Dale Street School is needed, I have some concerns about the Elm Street location and the future of the old Dale Street building. And she lists out each of her concerns. So the first one is, if the premises having the 4 grades close to each other, for ease of professional collaboration, was the possibility of having the schools physically joined explored. And the answer to that is that Susan, yes, thank you. We physically connecting the buildings would necessitate bringing Wheelock up to current code, which is a much more expensive project and not one that the SBC felt the town would support. And this was also asked at the Warrant Committee subcommittee meeting with the SBC on August 31st. The next question was regarding installation of artificial turf. She mentioned that on a Zoom call, mention was made of installing artificial turf to replace one of the fields that the new building would be sited on at a cost of $2 million. And the answer to that is at one point they were considering artificial turf fields, but there are no artificial turf fields in the plan. And there are currently 2 multi-sport grass fields at the Wheelock site. Each one is approximately 69,000 square feet for a total of 138,000 square feet. The proposed plan, the elementary school at Wheelock site would eliminate these grass fields, and the plan is to build a new replacement high school size soccer lacrosse grass field of 86,000 square feet. And the cost of that new replacement field is $951,993, including all site work, topsoil, irrigation system, sports grass field. And it's already included in the project budget that's been submitted to the MSBA. This issue was also covered at the by the SBC at their community forum on September 22nd. So take a look at that video replay. The next question was on traffic and sidewalks. And that she's at the Zoom meeting, a slide showing the 3 roads, Knollwood, Cross, and Stephen, with one-way traffic, did not list hours that they would have limited through traffic. Cross Street should have a sidewalk like all other adjacent roads, probably most important to me. So on the sidewalk on Cross Street, that was explained along with the other traffic mitigation proposals at the subcommittee meeting with the SBC on August 31st. And there is there's an analysis of sidewalks that's being prepared.
For when we
And
meet
we'll
next.
talk about that at the next meeting, I guess, the October 14th meeting. And then the last question she had was on Dale reuse. What's the future of the old Dale Street building? What are the costs in keeping a building mothballed and demolished? Park and Rec is frequently mentioned as a potential tenant. With the cost of keeping a building open for a small community makes sense. The scope of this SBC should include not only building a new building, but what's left behind when they do. Yes, as everyone knows, the issues with the Dale building, as well as future uses, we dedicated a complete meeting to that on September 23rd, 2021. And the replay is available. Permanent Building Committee is the one that includes the scope of all permanent buildings in Medfield. And the school building committee was only created solely with regard to this particular project on the school. And again, we're still completing the analysis of the cost, and that'll be discussed at the next meeting.
All right, and then I should probably say we're jumping around a lot in topics, but that's because we're just doing these in the order that they were received.
Yeah,
Because
just going date. The earliest ones we got are the first ones we're talking about.
right, and I was trying to figure out how to do it by topic, but I didn't want to disconnect people's emails. So, yeah, order in which they were received. Okay. So the next one, it is from August 28th from Lauren Lilligren at 83 South Street. And And so what she says is, as a person living very close to the center, I'm particularly interested in the disposition of the Dale Street School and the estimated cost of the taxpayers. To be clear, if the new school passes and all goes well, June of 2024-ish, the building will no longer be a school. What will it be? What will be the costs? What will be the maintenance costs? And so same answer that Steve just gave. We did a session on that on the 23rd, so hopefully that provided her answers, and we'll get that information on the 14th.
The next question is from Tom Powers at 24 Elm Street, sent in on August 30th. Tom would like to request that the Warrant Committee address the issue with the proponents of this proposed school at the Wheelock site. If constructed, it appears that the project will push dog walkers toward the center of the well protection district, literally towards the wellhead, as I understand it. Every day, many dog walkers walk at Wheelock and are happily letting their dogs roam free without the constraints of legally required leashes. This leads to much of the dog waste being left on the ground, as their owners claim, "Oh, I didn't see it." And he talks about the toxicity of dog waste to our drinking water. So I think this particular one was actually asked that we had this before we had our meeting on the 31st with the SBC, and it was asked and discussed at that meeting on August 31st. And I think it's around 45 minutes in is the timestamp on that. And then also there will be a conversation on water that's scheduled for October 12th. And the attendees that are going to be attending that are Maurice Goulet, from the head of DPW, Bill Harvey, Water and Sewer, Mike Quinlan, the chair of the SBC, and then consultants from Niche Engineering and Environmental Partners.
And so that is a newly scheduled meeting that we haven't had a chance to talk about, but a lot of these questions had to do with water. And we also had gotten a couple of requests from some of the emails from these to be able to have Mo come and to talk to some of the consultants. So I spoke to Bill Harvey, and he very much welcomes the Water and Sewer Board doing that. So all of those people were available on the 12th. So we will do that. And that is our last planned conversation. Okay. And then the next,
You want me to do this one?
I
too,
was
for
gonna
water?
say, yeah, because well, the next like 4 or
There's
5
quite a few,
questions are
yeah.
all from Tom Powers,
Yeah, they're all from Tom.
and they're
Powers.
all have to do with water. So, or most of them have to do with water.
Yeah, a lot of
So-
them are, I mean, this one, he says, we're very concerned about the proximity of the proposed development to the town's water supply. We just voted to pay $12 million to fix our town wells, which happens to be at the proposed site. And he talks about the Water and Sewer Board member, I guess it was Bill.
I think it was Bill
Yeah,
Harvey, yeah.
who spoke at the town meeting. And he refers to him as the gentleman from the Water and Sewer Board appears to misremember and therefore mislead taxpayers on the 41-second mark, saying the proposed project would not impact the aquifer. And we addressed this specifically. I reread the quote from the town meeting at the August 31st meeting. So that's covered in that video. You know, the same comment about the water, the water topic that we're going to be discussing on October 12th. Also there. Now, the next one, we got there were quite a few questions. This is the first time it comes up, but there were a lot of questions around cost of the school and using sort of a per grade metric. And then there was also an analysis sent in by Tom when the Dale folks came to our session, and where he had done his own analysis based upon information from the SBC website. So I thought, well, maybe just take some time and go
Sure.
through that, because I've looked at what he did, and I want to just make sure everybody, you know, understood what I did. This first slide is is what he handed us. And this is his comparison of the total cost figures from the MSBA. And he has, I don't know, maybe like nine towns on here, including Medfield. And what he's done is he has taken the Medfield construction cost of 82 million. And he's compared it to the construction cost of all these towns. So one of the observations I had was that
And this is Tom's, right?
this is Tom's analysis, yeah. So this first one on top is, it starts out with Medfield and then Millis and Triton, Marlboro, Lexington. That's Tom's analysis. And that particular one, you know, he's got on here the Medfield column of, he's got the $82 million number, and he's comparing it to construction costs for all these towns. So one of the issues is that the 82 million is not construction costs, that's the total project cost, okay? So that was sort of the first thing I noticed. The second thing I noticed is that the construction costs that he put on here were the final bid cost, okay? And so they are from the MSBA website, they are the bid costs, and I'll show you where those numbers come from in a minute. So those were the two big observations I had. Then I put together this sheet here. It's like a 2-pager.
Steve, before you go on,
Yeah.
the big costs that you pulled from Millis through where, those are the construction costs, not total project costs.
Construction cost.
Whereas you
right?
contrast that to the 82 million being total
Total,
project.
yeah,
So you have an apples to orange.
that's an apples to orange comparison. He's taking the full project cost of 82 and comparing it to just the construction cost.
Okay.
Okay.
And then the second item is that he's using the bid numbers instead of the schematic design
Estimates.
estimate. So these are the two sources that I use. They're the MSBA reports. One is the schematic design estimate, because these are the December 2020, reports right off the MSBA website.
These two.
Yeah, one of them is the estimate at schematic design, and the other one is the bid results. Okay, they're both from the MSBA website. And so, since we haven't gotten to the bid phase, I thought using the schematic design numbers was a better
It's better apples to apples.
yeah, apples to apples comparison. And I'll show you why in a minute, but basically, so this is the revised sheet that I did. It's basically, it's got just the design enrollment, the square feet, the total project cost, and the construction cost. So you can see for Medfield, our construction cost was 64 million. Right, and then the math is just the math, construction cost per square foot and construction cost per student. So these are just right off of they're right off this spreadsheet. That's all. It only includes new construction. So if it's a ad reno, it's not on here, but that would be in the MSBA, summary. It just includes new construction, and then it only goes from 2016. Even though this spreadsheet goes back to 2012. So the MSBA database goes back to, I guess, 2014, excuse me. And so that's what that is. And that's just this is just the source documents, right? It's right from the MSBA website. You can tie all the numbers back. The next one is the MSBA bid results. And these you can tie to Tom's schedule. So you can see, these 9 or 10 schools he has on here, the construction costs come right off of the bid result MSBA document.
And the sample, not sample, but the population in both documents is the same.
Yes.
Same schools.
Yeah, well,
Seeing in two different stages.
yeah, except some of them, there's more in the schematic design phase because they haven't gone out to bid.
Okay, fair enough, yeah.
So you'll find more schools there than you will in the bid summary.
Yep.
So this schedule is, the last schedule is just the the analysis of the differences between schematic design and the bid results. So you can see it just about in all cases, except a very small difference for one of them, Lexington. They were always, the bid numbers were always lower than the schematic design numbers. So that's why I thought it was important to use schematic design, because we haven't gotten to the bid phase yet, so. You know, to sort of apples to apples, we ought to look at schematic design estimates.
Right.
Now, not to throw a monkey wrench in, and I'm sorry.
No.
Do we know the number of grades in these schools being built?
No.
Are some of them like
They're all-
neighborhood schools that might be 1 through 8 or something?
They're all elementary.
Yeah.
So there's no middle or high school in these, in this analysis. And Tom
I was gonna
didn't,
say, Tom put it
Tom-
on his.
Tom didn't, only had elementary, so that's the population I'm dealing with. But I do not know the grade levels.
Okay.
I mean, you could find it in the, it's in these database sheets, but I didn't think it was, I mean, to me, the students and the square footage costs were the important,
Mhm.
you know, data points. So the you know, the only thing, the other things that I did not address that's in his analysis was sort of town populations and tax. I guess he has,
Household.
what does he have? He has, no, I guess he just has
He did cost per resident.
cost per resident. Yeah, so I didn't do that. But because I think different towns have different tax burdens, and they may be wealthy towns, they may not be, you know, I think that's sort of a subjective type analysis, so. So at any rate, so that's what I did, and that's this sheet is what, you know, what it resulted in, and you can see that there is, you know, so to sort of, you know, I think Tom, based on the analysis he did, he concluded that we were the highest ever in, you know, for all of, you know, history, basically, you know, and so I think what this shows is that, you know, we're not the highest ever. Even going back to 2019, towns like Amesbury and Westboro were, and that's like 2 years ago, so they were higher than us. Construction costs per student. And so, and the recent projects in Westwood and Wellesley are higher than us. Those are 2021 projects. So, and then obviously you can see the farther, you know, the farther you go back, the cheaper the schools are, but there's even one here in 2018 that was 122,000 per square foot, which is Manchester, Essex. So.
Well, Tisbury is 132 per student.
Tisbury, yes.
Yeah,
right,
Tisbury.
right,
Well,
right.
it's an important point there that, you know, inflation. So when you
Yeah.
compare 2022 to 2017, you're gonna find, you know, I mean, one could look at it, but I think the most, if we can get more recent comparisons, like what you've done, you know.
Yeah.
So 2021 and 2022 costs comparable in this process.
Yeah.
To me, would be more meaningful than trying to go back to 2016, 2017, because you're gonna be, inflation is gonna be.
Yeah, and you can see that the cost per square foot just keeps going up every year, so it's.
And in the Medfield School Building Committee's number, inflation is built into it.
5% per year.
So they're projecting
Right,
that, so
right.
that makes it very challenging.
It's, yeah.
So that's, you know, that's it, but there is, you know, you can see there are fluctuations, right? I mean, you know, depending on how people, you know, and you can see here that some of these low ones, like you look at Bourne, well, that went out under a DBB process. And came in, you know, significantly less. So there's,
Well, I was gonna say the sheet that you did here that you called out whether or not it was the DBB or the CMR.
Right.
And when we talked to Mike last week, he talked about the fact that CMR is generally more
Right.
Yes.
expensive.
Okay, so they take
Right.
a risk.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah, didn't he say it was like 5% more expensive to do senior? Was it
in that
something
gym.
like
I think
that?
so, yeah.
I thought that's what he said.
Right.
Yeah, so,
I think he would have qualified that to say at the outset. the
Right, but, yeah, right,
expectation
there might
there
be
is
some,
saving generated for timeliness, et cetera.
right.
right,
I think even one of the interesting comments I thought he made in one of his presentations was that the larger the square footage of the building, the lower the cost, obviously, per square foot.
Yeah.
Because so many of the costs are fixed. You know, if you have a gym this big and the lighting is X amount of dollars, you can add a little more square footage to the gym without any incremental cost of lighting. So the
Right.
cost per square foot goes down. There's many examples of that. So
Right.
even that metric, which is one of the metrics we use, you really have to understand the numbers behind it.
well, I was gonna say, you can see that right here on the Westwood and the Wellesley one, because the Westwood building is bigger.
Right.
It's bigger than ours, but it's smaller in enrollment. So like if we're doing a 575, they're only doing a 560. Our building's 95,000, theirs is 113. So when you
Right.
go all the way over, their cost per square foot
Sure.
is smaller, but their cost per student is higher.
Right. Exactly.
All right. So you have to peel the onion.
Right.
Yeah,
Thank you, Steve, for putting this together.
yeah, so, and I just want to take some time to go over that, because there's quite a few questions you'll see on. When somebody picks up the school that was done 5 years ago or whatever. It's, I think this is a fair analysis of what people should look at, so.
And I think it's also important that the categories are, in addition to the comparability, and I think as we go through and talk to Mike in the school building committee group, understand why each one of these is what it is.
Yeah, that's a good point, and because Mike Quinlan has an analysis that doesn't go back quite as far as the one I did, but his has a few more data points on it, like, was it a net zero building? Or,
Right.
I forget some of the other things.
I was gonna say, I think that's in the
He-
Q and A
that-
later, because Renee
yeah,
asked a question.
Yeah, that is
recently
in the
about that.
Q and
Yeah,
A,
we'll get
it's
to it.
actually, it's on the website too, so.
Yeah.
So anyway, let me go back to Tom's question here, so then, is there anything else on the cost side of those numbers, or?
No.
Okay,
And I actually just want to say, Jill or Amanda, if you guys ever want to say anything, just jump in and talk over us, because the OWL actually prefers people on Zoom versus the people in person. So if I'm not looking at you and you want to say something, just start talking, okay?
Okay, you have to get your own.
The only question I had on the analysis, and this comes up a bit, and I don't know if we address it somewhere else, but I know we have the enrollment numbers on that document, Steve, which is great. This is a great look. Is it possible, and does it make sense to look at how many grades that represents? Is it more of a neighborhood school and it's, K through 5, or is it just similar grade configuration?
yeah, I would say the chances of these being like a 4 or 5 grade configuration is probably very small. I can,
He's got them.
he's got them there.
I was gonna
yeah.
say, on all of the ones that are on Tom's, Tom has that, so we would just have to grab it
He's
for
got-
the ones that
Yeah,
Steve added.
it's there, we could put it on there. We've got that information.
I think that,
I mean, I guess I assume that the cost per grade was not a good data point. for
Oh,
us.
I
that's
agree.
like,
I think it's more like informative.
yeah,
Okay,
I was gonna say, because,
that's why I didn't put it on, because I didn't think it was.
Right.
you know,
It's not a
Yeah.
metric.
Right.
and we had asked that question of Mike Quinlan on the 31st, and he talked for a while about the due grade versus cost per student.
Yeah.
And not trying to paraphrase him, because I know that was part of our answer here, was that people could watch the 31st, but I feel like I think he had recommended a cost per student or a cost per square foot.
Right.
Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah. Okay,
so on the modulars.
so this is, just to clarify, we're all still on the same email from Tom Powers.
Yes,
Yes,
the August 30th email.
yeah, okay,
He has a bunch of different ones on August 30th.
yeah, there was probably like 5 or 6 on
So
that,
there's,
yeah.
So on the modulars, he talks about, there's a bit of a disconnect with what we're told the taxpayers will have to bear these costs because the children of today do not do well in modular classrooms. And that the trauma moving from Wheelock to Dale is too traumatizing. Generations of our children did just that. I've asked several of those students, and no one remembers any problems with the modular classrooms or the trauma of the transition. Please get to the bottom of why they were allowed to go this far with the project. So the modular discussion was that was discussed at the educational program subcommittee meeting
Mhm.
on September 29th. Is sort of what we're gonna point Tom to. And then there was another question, and this one I'm not gonna spend too much time on because we did cover this in detail at the subcommittee meeting with the SBC. He had sent in some town GIS pictures and, you know, was, had some comments about, you know, the building in a well protection district. And I think we, you know, in that meeting on the 31st with the SBC, we went through all of that and discussed that. So I think that's fairly well covered there. Then on, he has some other, you know, things that he talks about around water. And, you know, I think in the last meeting we had, you know, where we talked about, I talked about adding some additional documents to the website around what the schematic design calls for, and the actual design of what they're trying to do at the site with the stormwater drainage system. You know, though obviously those are designed to improve the current conditions. And it's going to address both the quantity, rate, volume, and quality, which would be constructed for the new school and parking lot. And it's going to meet all state, local, federal regulations and require quantity and quality mitigation measures. And then adding the Mass DEP approved stormwater systems to not only the new building, but upgrading the existing Wheelock parking areas will result in an increase in water quality for stormwater that's recharged into the ground by bringing the entire site up to current codes and best practices. So that the last question he had was on the given an oil spill has taken place at the site. Apparently, it is entirely possible. So it is dangerous to ignore that possibility. And that issue was addressed at the SBC meeting. There was a letter that was produced, and we put it on our website about that particular oil spill and the cleanup efforts that were undertaken around that back in 1988, I think it was. And then in the other comment is oil spills are not a future risk due to the new building being designed as an all-electric building. And the existing Wheelock site school, the existing Wheelock school is being heated by natural gas. And there are no planned uses of any petroleum products at the new elementary school, as stated in the August meeting. So I think this next section is just the same stuff, you know, around oil and oil spill, and then the water issues. So
Right, and
I
he
think-
sent us a PDF from a Boston Globe article about road salt.
road salt, right?
So again, it's the same questions over again. So
Yeah.
the answer for that are the same ones that you just went through. And again, we're gonna cover all of that again in immense detail on the 12th too.
Right.
Okay. All right, so this next one is really long. Should I?
Let me split it up.
I was gonna say. Okay, so
Yeah,
then
this is a long one.
this is a really long one. So this is on So on September 1st, Renee Howley at 3 Harding Street sent us several different questions. So I think that maybe what I'll do, maybe I'll read the first paragraph and we'll address those maybe.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you for your thoughtful comments and questions during the meeting regarding the new school replacement project. I appreciate any and all efforts to make sure it's cost effective. Mr. Murray is totally correct that there are people who will not be able to afford to live here if the proposal stays as is. There are many options that can be investigated to lower the cost of the school. I hope the Board of Selectmen and Warrant Committee do a deep dive into what is extraneous in this design. There are $25,000 for log benches, butterfly houses, rain gardens, walking paths, outdoor classroom space that just do not add to the educational benefits as a cost benefit analysis. Outdoor classrooms, question mark. Teachers barely have time in the day to get through the curriculum now. How are they going to be able to do that with outdoor time? So how about I stop there and we answer that one? Why don't we do that?
Yeah.
Again, before it gets, okay, so, the question about the outdoor classrooms and those things were covered on both the September 8th meeting that we had with the school committee and the September 29th meeting we had on the educational program. And then we have some additional answers that were provided to us by Mike Quinlan, the SBC chair. So he said, with regards to the log benches, they're for the outdoor classroom, similar to what is shown in a photo, which I'm noticing that I missed putting in here because photo didn't come over, but he said they do not cost $25,000. They're carrying an allowance of $15,000 for those. These would be where kids would sit in the outdoor classroom. We're carrying $2,000 for butterfly and bird houses as they are an educational tool, again, as the allowance until we reach the next level of design. Many studies have shown that the health, physical, emotional, and mental and educational benefits of teaching outside. A simple Google search will lead you to a plethora of research. This is very common these days at the elementary school level. These outdoor classrooms have been an even bigger focus since COVID. Schools that do have them have used them far more than pre-COVID. And in my mind, cutting them to save an order of magnitude, $60,000 on an $82 million school designed to last 50 years is short-sighted, but that's a value judgment admittedly. I would encourage anyone who is interested in learning more about how they would be used to consult Steve Grenham or the teachers. So I would wholeheartedly disagree that they do not provide an educational benefit. And just to repeat, I'm quoting Mike Quinlan. And then for the rain gardens, is that still part of this answer?
Well,
Or is that different, or is that the next
well,
question?
well, yeah, I think that's next down, but he says, Wheelock requires additional, she said, Wheelock requires additional infrastructure. No, actually, yes, I missed this 900.
No, we missed,
Classrooms are designed at 900.
yeah, the square feet one, yeah,
Versus an MSBA minimum of 850.
right.
That one,
That's on page 10.
yeah. So under, so her comment was that the classrooms are designed at 900, but the MSBA minimum is 850. And I believe the answer is a reference to the Commonwealth of Mass Regulation 963 2.06 Table 4, where it shows that the net square feet minimum is 900 square feet. So the table has the 900, and he said that the minimum that she cited was for a middle or high school. So, let's see, the next one was, the auditorium, gym, and cafeteria. I'm skipping.
Oh, no, you skip. So the next one is, how about this? How about I'll read the question and you read the answer?
Okay.
Okay, so, all right, so the next question was, Wheelock requires additional infrastructure costs, water and sewer that just are not required at the Dale site.
And that one is, so. Response, this is by Quinlan. I continue to see this being posted. I wish someone could explain how there are no costs for water and sewer at Dale. Jerry Potts continues to post online that there is there are $11 million in site costs that wouldn't be required at Dale. This is wildly inaccurate at best. I've noted multiple times in public meetings when we were evaluating the two sites, the differences that led to the Wheelock being more expensive than a new school at Dale. And those differences are the water line, which is $900,000. The water line on Elm is too small for the water we would need for fire protection. It requires us to replace a little less than a mile of pipe to go from 6 to 8 inches. And then the next one is Wheelock site improvements, approximately $2 million. We could build a new school at Wheelock without addressing existing parking, paving, drop off at Wheelock, but that would be short-sighted. First off, it needs replacement, but also it has no stormwater runoff system. We're addressing the capital maintenance issue that the town will be on the hook for at some point as that paving continues to degrade, and it just doesn't make sense to ignore it while we may be building a new school adjacent to it. This has the added benefit of helping to improve the stormwater runoff by bringing that area up to codes and design standards, which were far superior to the 1970s.
So the next, her next sentence is the auditorium, gym, and cafeteria are all larger than what is required. World-class music rooms. Again, it's 4th and 5th grade. Do we really need world-class facilities? This also leaves us open to maintenance costs at Dale Street.
And the response from Mike Quinlan is we don't have an auditorium. So I don't know where she got that from. The gym is larger than the minimum by a couple thousand square feet. And the stage in the cafeteria is a couple hundred square feet larger than the minimum. I don't understand the world-class music room statement. There's nothing world-class about this project. Our music rooms are pretty standard to what's being built today. There's been a lot of people questioning being over the minimum square feet the MSBA would require. We are less than 4,000 square feet from the minimum. As a frame of reference, my Ashland project is 12,000 square feet larger than the minimum. Our Wellesley project is over 19,000 square feet. Our Westwood project is over by 30,000. And then when we finished in Millis, was 10,000 square feet over the minimum. You won't find many, if any, projects that are as close to the minimum as we are in Medfield.
So just a comment, like editorially, I think that in fairness, like in the answers, we don't have an auditorium, period.
Right.
I don't think we want to put it, I don't know where she gets that from. I don't think we need to make reference to those things. I think it's.
No, these were just straight quotes. We asked
No, I
Mike Quinlan
understand,
for an
but I'm
answer.
just-
Yeah,
These aren't our answers.
These are his answers that are verbatim from his response.
right. We didn't rewrite them.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I mean.
I don't disagree with
From
you.
the Warrant Committee?
Well, I put at the top of the below answers are additional answers provided by Mike Quinlan.
Okay,
So that was, yeah, I didn't want to edit anybody's answers to the emails, which is why like people's emails they sent us are verbatim. And then if we forwarded this and asked for Mike to respond, I didn't edit his.
but has he responded already, or is it?
Yes, he did. These are
What I
his.
just read is his
Oh,
response.
okay, so it's different from, so some of these have been responded to and some have not.
He sent us the response to include here.
But these haven't been sent out to Renee, if that's your question. The answers that we just went over.
His answers have not gone up yet.
Right.
That is correct. So what happened with Renee sent this in, and then she had so many questions that we forwarded the email to Mike Quinlan and asked him if he could point us in the direction of responses. These ones that were just read, this was his email back to us. To those, and so what he did was he broke it up kind of by sentence and then he wrote his responses. So you're correct. Those statements are not from us as a warrant committee, they are from Mike and his responses.
They're basically Mike's answers to us.
Yes, but he said,
He wouldn't say to her, I don't know where she got that.
yeah,
I'm just trying to
potentially,
be
yes,
clear with
no,
you.
yeah, no, that's
Yeah,
true,
I'm
yes,
not-
he said that these would be helpful in us helping to respond to her.
Yes. And us, him.
Yes.
All right, I'm not gonna-
Understood. Okay, all right, so the next one is the arguments about going to a 2-school system really doesn't play into this either. The MSB requirement is for 575 kids, whether built at Dale or Elm. We're still building at Dale does not prohibit that from happening in the future. Adding the memorial after a number of years then puts the kids all on one campus. I really don't understand that particular argument for Elm at all.
And I think he said that he didn't understand, he wasn't following the question, I guess, and because he said there is no option to go to 2 schools
Right.
or to have all our elementary schools on the Dale Memorial site.
Mhm.
That's Mike speaking.
That is Mike speaking again. And then she had some questions on the comparisons. And so she talked about Abington built 2 schools, a middle high school campus that houses grades 5 through 12. And plus pre-K housing approximately 1,200 plus kids. That school opened in 2017 for a cost of 96 million, spending 82 million for 2 grades on 1 building seems absolutely unacceptable to us taxpayers. I understand costs have increased, but I cannot resolve the 2 in my head.
And he said, again, this is Mike, he thinks there's some things there that need to be corrected. Abington did not build 2 schools, they built a single school to house their middle school, high school grades 5 through 12. Looking at costs, it should be compared from time of bid, not when it opened. Abington was bid in 15, we are pricing our project in $2022 because that's when we will bid. That's a 7-year difference. They did build it for 96 million. And the cost per square foot for that project was a little below average for that time. Obviously, construction prices have increased significantly since then. It's also hard to compare elementary school to a middle school, high school. I have plenty of recent elementary school data to compare that gives it, and then it goes. And I think the last thing he said is Westwood and Ashland are particularly relevant, schools to look at. He said that Westwood is 560 students, 87 million total. I mean, these are all in that spreadsheet, so I'm not gonna walk through them. That's it. Is that it for that question?
That's it for that email. And then she did send another, Renee Howley at Three Harding Street sent another email on the 3rd. And so this one was, she said she watched the meeting with the PAC, and we're assuming based on that date that she means the for our kids for our school PAC, because we had not had the Dale meeting yet. It says that it also raised another alarming point that the outreach was going to be targeted at the PTO New in Town and groups like that. She seems that that is an exclusive population geared towards kids with direct benefits from the school. What about the Council on Aging? What about folks that aren't on Facebook? So there was community outreach. And so I was a little bit confused on this as to whether or not, because I do think at the end of the PAC discussion, they talked about places that they were going to go, but there was also talk on the 31st of where the SBC was going to go on their community roadshow. So,
yeah, I think on the PAC, she does say she watched the PAC meeting, so I'm
yeah.
assuming that she's referring to that end discussion where the PAC said they were gonna do some outreach. But again, they're a political action committee.
They can
they can do what
it.
they want. It's not really, it's different than the SBC, so.
Right, and so, so part of the answer is that from an SBC perspective, we knew that they've already done meetings at the Lions Club and the high school PTO. And then as of the list I received yesterday from Anna Mae and Mike, they're going this week to New in Town, next week to MCPE, Council on Aging, and then the Memorial PTO. They did reach out to Memo to ask if they could hold a forum with Memo, but Memo declined to allow them to host it. So I know, so that one is not happening. They are still trying to schedule ones with at Park and Rec with the CPAC group and also with the Medfield Public Library, and that they plan to do a final all community forum on the 28th of October in the high school auditorium. And then, let's see, so she then makes a comment that Dr. Marston uses the school email list, and she does not think that, she thinks that's a blatant misuse of a communication tool. And then she asks whether or not there are going to be any mailings happening in regards to this. And so for that, I know that discussions are ongoing as to how exactly that's going to happen, because for a special town meeting, they don't have to do that. But I do think that there's a desire by at least some of the selectmen and Scott, and they'll have to figure out how we're necessarily going to do a mailing. My recollection is from the last special town meeting, I think it was just a handout as you went in. I think the problem is that when they call it 2 weeks before, whether or not they can get it out, but yeah, my answer is I don't have an answer to that yet, because nobody has said what they're gonna do yet.
But isn't what we're doing some response to that?
Yes, and well, and that's part of what I had put in here, is that, you know, all of our minutes and things like that are available at the warrant committee meeting. So if there are people that don't have access to be able to watch the videos, that's why we're doing the minutes as well. So, and then I didn't add this here, but we'll just add that we're doing the warrant hearing on the 26th to be able to hear from everyone in all groups too. So I suppose I can toss that in there.
Let me do this one.
Yeah, sure.
So on September 3rd, Steve Caskey from 5 Delaware Road submitted a question with a number of questions. So I think a major question that's been asked a bunch is what happens to Dale if it ends up at Wheelock? If it's too old and decrepit for our school children, why would it be okay for Parks and Rec to use for our children? You know, I think that was covered at the Dale meeting on the 23rd. He also had a question, if they take it over and need serious upgrades, where will the Park and Rec get the money from? I recall Park and Rec was looking for a brand new building. You know, there's a lot of questions on costs of the Park and Rec in renovating Dale. And, you know, that we had that meeting on the 23rd, the estimated cost and the budget. We're still, you know, the cost of all that work, we're still working on, and that's supposed to be ready by the next meeting on the 14th. And then his last question is, what's the total cost of Wheelock? I've heard multiple numbers and add-ins. I thought I heard Wheelock campus will also receive repairs. If the school is placed there, what will those repairs encompass? And so here we just refer him to the meeting on the 22nd, the community forum that the SBC held with specifically on costs. Again, this was sent in on the 3rd, so that, you know, he didn't have that information, but it's all in that community forum. And then the same answer on the Wheelock site improvements that we just went over with Renee on the $2 million is also there, that Mike Quinlan provided. And then he has a question on why does the Dale Street group have a PAC and who are the donors? So our answer is that the Keep Dale at Dale Coalition PAC is opposing an anticipated proposed article that will come before the town meeting. They have filed organization documents with the town clerk and will be required to file finance forms disclosing the donors and expenditures 8 days before a special town meeting and 30 days after the election. And at that point, whoever the donors are will become public information.
Can I just address that particular one? Since I'm the-
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. First of all, the Dale Coalition is not a PAC. We are a municipal ballot question committee. And there's a distinct difference between the political finance office with that. So that's just one factual correction. And then the filing 8 days is before the ballot election, and we don't have to file before the special town meeting. So the 8-day requirement is before the ballot.
Oh,
election.
before the ballot.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can correct that.
Which is the day of the special meeting.
No,
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 it's like a week after.
I think what she's talking about is that it would be on the
15th.
one on the 15th, the actual one that happens at the Council on Aging. Right? Am I correct,
Yes.
Chris? That's what you
Yeah.
meant.
So it's
Yeah.
8 days before that,
yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
which is the 7th.
Oh, is that what you're connecting the two? Oh, it's business days, I think.
Well, I'm just saying that the requirement, the filing requirement is 8 days before the ballot election
Which is,
versus how it's
which
written
is
here.
the 15th is the ballot.
Right, I know,
8 days
but
I'm just
before-
talking about how it's written in
I
here.
understand, it. I'm just trying to understand that, I'm putting it into the context of the meeting, the ballot is on the 15th.
Right.
8 days before the 15th is the 7th.
Sure.
Yeah, so the day of the election, it would be
Yeah, I'm
known.
not arguing
yeah,
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the day
And
of
the
the
day of the
election.
special town meeting would be known too,
I'm sorry, the date of the special
Yes.
town meeting,
because it's the
it
7th.
would be
Oh.
They
public
would need to
information.
then, yeah.
Just-
okay,
No, it's just.
Okay.
It's just fine, I'm just trying to get clarity, I
No, I
appreciate your
understand.
comment.
No,
Okay.
I'm just reading the way that this was answered, just to make sure that it was clear that the legal requirement is the filing is 8 days
Days before
before the ballot election.
gotcha. We'll make that
We'll
change.
make that for change. That's
Yeah.
no problem. So
Sounds
then his last question was, I am on the safety committee with the DPW director and the police chief. We spoke briefly about what the traffic situation at Wheelock would look like. After soccer games, the neighborhood is stacked with cars from the stop sign back to the school. Is there a plan to address this traffic issue? Have the neighbors been polled? I would be curious on their thoughts. So the answer is yes, that they get neighborhood feedback and mitigation, was presented to and discussed at the SBC meeting on the 24th. And before the date, 2 community forums and traffic questionnaires were done. And you can, both the form and the questionnaire are on the website, our website, and the traffic links that are part of the project are also in the, on the website, so. And then the forum, the community forum on the 13th also talked about traffic. So,
So I think,
what you.
yeah, I was gonna say, I think that's the end of, yeah. So the next one is Tom Ramlow at 1 Maryland Road, and this was from September 4th. And so he has a few questions here. So the first one is, the Wheelock campus site idea has the often noted multiple advantages of closeness of the 2 to 5 grades and overall space that the Dale Memorial site lacks. However, if the November override falls short of 2/3, what happens in 120 days to the $18 million MSBA grant? Is there any guarantee we'll get it all back next time, or can the MSBA equally just reject a new submission? Keep going. These all seem to be related to the same
Yeah,
thing. I mean, in essence, I think Tom is asking what happens if it passes and what happens if it fails, and we covered that several times. And so the answer is we can't predict the future, but if you would like to listen to all of that, we talked about it on August 31st. We also talked about it on September 23rd. And then and then I also have it listed here September 8th and September 29th. And I think the reason why I listed that was because in the reference, in his first sentence, he said it has advantages of the 2 through 5. So I deemed that as also asking about the educational plan, which is why I listed the 8th and the 29th. And then he just says, have you considered MSBA's past 10 history of long delays with the majority of fail votes, new construction? And so again, we covered that in the 31st and the 23rd. So do I do the next one?
yeah. Tom Powers on the September 7th at 24 Elm Street. Just watched another video regarding the proposed school project. I had another point to bring up. There was a discussion of how basketball courts, which appear to not be for 3rd and 4th graders, are much in need in Medfield. And that we have kids today who have to go to Wellesley to practice. The indignity of it all. 10 years ago, my kids drove to Wellesley to practice back in the day and survived. It's actually very safe there. They practice at Dana Hall. The school project is not a park and rec project. My kids also played pickup at the police station and the high school. These courts are free with no rental costs. And then I would suggest that the Warrant Committee ask why the school building committee feels it was tasked with asking the taxpayers to solve any rec league basketball court shortage. There have been several private developer proposals over the years that seem to improve courts that for whatever reason didn't happen. I believe many taxpayers will, when educated, will not feel that is an appropriate and necessary cost to bear, given that the courts appear to be purposely being built for other uses than third and fourth graders. So the discussion on, the answer on this was talked about on the sides of the gym and the basketball courts with the SBC on the 31st of August, and it was also covered during the school committee meeting on September 8th. So both of those video replays cover those question of basketball courts. Then he has a question on the field. The same applies to turf fields. Mr. Martian seems to be suggesting are necessary. And so I think we covered that. That's the same response. It's basically there are no turf fields in the project as proposed. There's only grass, and the statistics on the different fields and the costs are in that answer that we talked about earlier. And then his last question deals with I just discovered it appears we may be setting two records. 41 million per grade appears to be a record for not small towns, but any town. The proposal clocks in at well over 200,000 per student, with our enrollment figures of 375. He said 375 students on day one. No town is even close, according to the MSBA figures I reviewed. So that I just referred to the analysis that we just
That you
went
just
over
did.
on the cost. Then he has the group has presented a number of sessions held out as how they have been promoting open dialogue. I include some screenshots of what it feels like on the other end of their calls. I think when he says the group, he means the SBC. It has also contributed to the frustration of many and the perception that something worth 82 million ought to be handled differently. In addition,
He goes on to
my
the,
previous suggestion, I would request the Warrant Committee ask again and again. He talks about the cost in the metrics, the school grade cost. So it's the same issue he's bringing up, and it's the same analysis that we've done. And then he has a question about an open meeting law complaint. And it appears the town was unable to share some building committee minutes for what I have heard is an extensive period. Some of this period supposedly covers a time when the proposed projects clearly would have been discussed. This was also supposedly prior to site selection, which we are led to believe just happened. It might cover a time period where it may be believed by some that the proposed site was predetermined and that the plan was always predetermined to move Park and Rec into the Dale Street School. And this, we did talk about this, and there's a number of different pieces of correspondence on this, and that's on the website. And then Christine did cover it at our September 13th meeting. So, and then his last question is about Dale reuse, and we just referred him to that September 23rd meeting on the Dale building.
and then there's two more emails from Tom Powers, 24 Elm Street again on September 8th. Both of them have to do with water. The first one is he asked for calculations performed by environmental partners in order to document its conclusion regarding the proposed relocation of the Dale Street to the Wellhead Protection District. So that the answer was that, so we received this from Mike Quillen of the SBC. Environmental partners were not asked to evaluate calculations. They were asked to evaluate our project relative to our bylaws and determine whether it would be permitted. Calculations for stormwater aren't completed until later in the design process and are submitted to necessary permitting agencies. And so the environmental partners consultant who wrote that letter is coming on the 12th of October, so we would suggest that Tom listen to that one. And then also on the 8th, he sent another email asking about the oil spill again, and whether or not the town should engage in some soil testing prior to construction. So the answer for that is, we talked about the oil spill again on the 31st. And then there is plan to do additional soil testing at the Wheelock site prior to construction. The proposed schematic design budget includes a line-by-line amount of $225,000 for testing services. And there's another schematic design budget line item for soil disposal, $100,000 for that, for contaminated soil allowance in the event that it is needed. So I guess the answer is soil testing will happen later as part of the project. And then again, we talk about the meeting. Oh, yeah, I'll just do this next one. Yeah, so then, as I had mentioned, I had put in one of the questions. So there was a conversation with Steve Ganem from One Cross Street at the Dale at Dale meeting we held on the 9th, where Steve was talking to us about the sidewalk issue around the Wheelock site. And then I had also mentioned that we should, if we're gonna look at the Wheelock site sidewalks, we should look at the Dale site sidewalks. So I'm still working on that. So we'll have that for the next meeting on the 14th.
And then Christian Donner at 92 Green Street sent in a number of questions on September 9th, which these were ones that he asked at the actual morning session that we had with them, and we asked him to put them in an email and send them to us, so he did that. So the first question is the general process question. Instead of a due diligence process after the fact, we spent $1 million already on planning. Could we be doing a cost due diligence up front instead of budget cap going into larger building projects? And I'm going to combine this one with his last question, which would it make sense to have estimates independently reviewed by an expert who's not paid by the project or working for the SBC? So to thank Christian for his comment, but the MSBA process establishes certain steps and phases that are required to be followed. One of those steps is to accomplish a feasibility study. As part of this feasibility study, the MSBA requires cost estimates to be done by 2 independent cost estimating firms. In our case, it's Fogarty and PMC. And these 2 estimators must reconcile their estimates and explain any differences. The costs related to town building projects in general are ultimately subject to review by the permanent building committee, or in this case, the school building committee, the board of selectmen, the warrant committee, and ultimately approval by residents at the special town meeting. And his next question was on the Newton Ainger School that opened in the early I guess like 5-6 years ago. And he has questions around the cost and square footage, and wanting to compare that to what's going on with Medfield. And so we understand, our answer we put together, we understand Newton Ainger School was approved by the MSBA board in October 2013 and started construction in 2014. And then we refer him to the cost analysis that we have done on school data points. All right. The next question he had was on soft costs. Basically, a number of questions here. So he focused in on the security system, and he wanted to know, are these cost line items, are they for installed or material only? And he listed out 3 or 4 different categories of costs for 360-degree cameras, 180-degree dome cameras, a Samsung video monitor, enhanced security system, and then racks with head-end equipment. And he thought they were high. So on the security system, we did inquire about that. So all cost estimates are installed. The Fogarty estimates, which he asked a question about, they totaled up to about 381,000. And that Fogarty number was reconciled to another independent estimate from PMC. And the PMC estimate was the one that was used in the final budget submission to the MSBA. And what I didn't realize, I found this out, the details about the security system are restricted due to the sensitive nature of the building being a public school. The details of the schematic design and security system that was prepared by Pamela Perini Consulting is marked as confidential. So we couldn't even see the details if we wanted to, because it makes sense. It's a school. They don't want anyone to know.
How to break into
Yeah.
them.
Well, with all of the
Okay.
shootings that have happened around the
Yeah.
country and stuff like that. So, so anyway, but we do have the categories, and I've listed those out here for the different categories of the security system. And you can see there's like the head end, the card access system, there's an intrusion system, and a video management system, and a closed circuit TV surveillance system, which I guess is proprietary. And then they also integrate this with the district-wide system. So there's cost for that. And
Just a
Yeah.
comment.
Yeah.
Well, I guess, I mean, I interrupt, but the comment that says, that should be reviewed by an expert who's not paid by the project or working for the SBC. I think as a member of the Warrant Committee, I would like to highlight the fact that we have 3 experts who are engaged in the business
Mhm.
of building schools in the SBC. I think from a perspective of, this is not just a bunch of people sitting around figuring out costs. These are, I think that's a benefit of the school building committee. We do have 3 people who are experts in their field.
yeah,
I'll leave that to the rest of the people that comment. But to me,
well, we could add a sentence on that. I bet that's a good point. Those
Do we have experts?
that's very important.
Tom, Mike, who's the third? Is it like Mike Weber or?
No, it's not
Tim.
Mike.
Tim.
Tim,
Like,
no, that was Tim,
And Mike Quinlan.
Mike Quinlan, and then
Tim, I say Tom, I'm
I'm
sorry.
losing.
Weber.
It's a man he works for the construction.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I don't know.
Apologies. We've got to get senior moment.
Mhm.
Okay, well, we can get that. But I think Mr. Weber is in the electrical.
He's in the election.
So
Yes,
he would have
3
expertise on the
Are
cost of the
engaged
electrical.
in
side.
building schools.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. So then the next question was on, I guess he called it excluded costs, IT equipment costs. He said IT equipment costs is excluded from estimates. Will there be additional expenditures for equipment, in particular IT equipment like desktop computers and servers? So I mean, I think he probably didn't see where it was in the budget, but there is a it's in the soft cost area, so it's not up in the hard cost area, but there is a budget line item for technology in the amount of 920,000. And we understand that the existing student computers for grades 4 and 5 are going to expire. They're scheduled to be replaced in 2024 when the building is scheduled to be completed. And so it made sense to put those in the budget because they will they'll get majority reimbursed by the MSBA. They do reimburse for not all of it, but most of it. And then there's no servers at the Dale building currently, and those servers are anticipated in the new building. The district has 3 servers district-wide, but none of them are at Dale.
All right, so on September 10th, Tom Powers emailed again from 24 Elm Street. And then this is a school comparison question, and it just says, I would suggest that if this process is to be somewhat independent, then it would serve everyone to get their own figures from MSBA rather than the school committee. And then he goes on to ask us to do that analysis, which Steve did. And he already presented, and so that was on the 4th. And then the next one is September 10th, also from Kathleen Donahue at 7 Steeplechase Drive. And so Kathleen says, thank you for all your work digging into the decision before our town with regards to a new elementary school. One question I have is in regards to the Medfield State Hospital space. In considering the cost of to taxpayers, if 300+ homes are built out at the state hospital grounds, how would that offset the cost to existing taxpayers? It is a what if right now, but I think that could potentially factor into the conversations, just as the new park and rec building has. I think the state hospital has a factor in school size. If we add new students at the state hospital, what effect would that have on enrollment? Thanks again for pulling this together in an unbiased way. And so, do you want to read that answer?
Yes,
You had found that answer.
So in the state hospital has two proposals that we got. Only one of them included information. One of the two proposals received had a fiscal impact study included. It was the Trinity Proposal. And that study was based on Trinity's proposed development of a 334 unit development. And of those 334 units, in this fiscal impact study, they had 137 with 2 and 3 bedrooms, which resulted in an estimate of additional school-age children between 47 to 67. And we just point her to the link of where the proposals are, and where she could get that information.
Okay, and then unless anybody objects with me, I am still going to end us at 9. You're good with that? Then we'll-
Walk Kincaid.
Oh, there you go. So we have like 8 more minutes, so we'll get through a few, and then we'll do part 2 of this next week. If that is okay with everyone. Is anybody gonna? I'm sorry, I stayed up and actually watched the Patriots game until the end last night, and
No,
as
you're
much as
good.
I
You're
enjoyed
good.
that, it is hitting me hard pretty.
You're absolutely
So,
right. I'm good.
okay.
Have a piece of chocolate.
I know, I need another piece of chocolate. Okay, so the next group of questions are actually all things that were placed in the Q&A of our September 13th meeting, because we had run over and didn't have a chance to address them. A lot of these we had actually already talked about, so I'm gonna paraphrase a little bit just to be able to get a few in here. So from Chris McHugh Potts at 7 Curve Street. This is in regards to the open meeting law complaint that we talked about that night, and she wanted to point out that we are missing not only the ones from 2018, but also the 2017 PP and BC minutes, the Permanent Planning and Building Committee minutes, and that there were several feasibility studies, bylaw changes and things like that going on. And so, again, we have posted all of the correspondence about that complaint on our website. And then also from Chris McHugh Potts at 7 Curve Street, same date. It says, after the quad meeting in the spring of 2020, Selectman Pete Peterson suggested having a non-binding town meeting vote on grade configuration. The other 2 selectmen agreed with him. School projects in other districts have failed at town meeting in a large part because of site selection. And in each instance, the towns responded to the MSBA saying it would further engage the community on key decisions, including site selection the next time around. Why are we repeating mistakes for the other towns? There is nothing within the MSBA process that prohibits a town from voting on site selection. In that case, of other towns, when the site has changed, the vote passed, MSBA has said it plays no role in site selection. So the answer is, the meeting you reference is on April 7th, 2020, in case anybody would like to watch it themselves. Pete's question is around 2 hours and 15 minutes in. His question, as you said, was not about site selection. His question was about whether or not it should be a 3-4-5 school or a 4-5 school. This meeting was not about site selection. To your point that the 3 selectmen agreed. If you listen to the meeting, Gus stated it wasn't possible to get that on the upcoming warrant, and Mike disagreed as well. Mike Pastore, who was the current chair of the Warrant Committee, also disagreed. And Mike Quinlan stated that he would have to run this type of vote by the MSBA's. It's not standard for the projects that have been seen. And then another from Chris McHugh Potts at 7 Curve Street, same date in the Q&A. And it says, please be sure to include this fact in your records. Medfield School Committee never discussed the educational benefits of the two sites being considered prior to SBC voting. The school committee never voted to put forth a recommendation to the Dale SBC on a specific site based on educational attributes. Agendas and minutes will confirm this. At the end of the day, school committee has responsibility for the construction and location of the new school on its property, and it should have absolutely weighed in on the educational pros and cons to help guide the SBC last fall, when some SBC members were expected to evaluate ed benefits, even though they had zero educational experience. So for an answer, we have the fact that the school committee didn't vote on site selection is covered during the warrant committee meetings on September 8th with the school committee and with the SBC on August 31st. Please refer to those video replays. The educational program and grade configuration are under the purview of the school committee. The site selection is under the purview of the school building committee, which has school committee representation on it. Yeah, sure, go for it.
The next one is from Chris McHugh Potts at 7 Curve Street, September 13th. Do you have factual documentation per Dale SBC chair, school building committee chair? He said, we did not study demolition of Dale because the community was not in favor of it. How does Dale SBC know that? Where is the hard data documenting the variety of community views on preservation of Dale? In all the years as a Metro resident, I do not remember a community survey asking whether or not they wanted to preserve the Dale Street School. So I think our response on this one is that well, I don't think it was a specific question in the survey. There were a number of comments in the survey wanting to preserve the numerous comments wanting to preserve the Dale as part of the survey. And then members of the SBC also stated that the request to keep the historic parts of the building came up at their community forums. And those forums are listed on their website. And then there's also public information on testimonials on the Dale at Dale website that refer to preservation of the historic building. And the cost of the demolition of Dale was calculated, and it's part of a forum on June 13th, 2021. It's in the materials. Next question is from Chris McHugh. It's important to note that when Parks and Rec released its feasibility study result in January 2020, it called for a new basketball court with the rationale the town was short of courts. However, since that time, Kingsbury Club has built 2 basketball courts. The old market analysis for town court needs is likely outdated by now, especially because of pandemic too. If a basketball court will be built in the new elementary school, given the presence of Kingsbury courts now, wouldn't it make sense to find a way to have a shared facility between the school and Park and Rec versus each entity building expensive courts? So this issue with the Dale and Dale building, the history of Park and Rec building projects was covered by the Warrant Committee at its September 23rd meeting. The discussion of sharing a building between the schools and Park and Rec, as well as the size of the gym and the basketball courts, was discussed with the SBC on August 31st. And it was also covered during the Warrant Committee meeting with the school committee on September 8th.
Okay, and then I think we'll do page 25 and then call it a night. How's that?
Can I just ask this? So for anybody, whether it's me or somebody else, who may not agree with the interpretation of the question that was asked, what would you prefer?
I would prefer for you to send an email to the warrant committee at medfield.net. That'd be great.
Thanks.
Okay. And so the next one on, so on page 25, it's Chris McHugh Potts, 7 Curve Street. And this one has to do with water, and it suggests that we read the Moody's bond rating and the reference to the 427 water stress. Both of those documents were posted to the warrant committee website in the last one, so everyone can feel free to read those. And then another one from from Chris Potts again. This one has to do with the reuse of Dale. It was stated to the MSBA in writing that a town committee would be created that would make the decision when the feasibility study for Park and Rec was discussed by the selectmen in 2018. It was stated that the Park and Rec facility should be self-funded. Selectmen are on record saying that it was their original expectation that the master planning committee would be making the Dale reuse decision. It is wrong for an automatic assumption to be made that Park and Rec would move into Dale. Like site selection, this should be pushed on residents without sufficient community input. And so we held a whole session on this on the 23rd that covered all of that. It goes through the entire process. There's also a legal opinion that was written that talks about the transfer process. That's also on our website. And the process is actually not decided by the master planning committee. The process is laid out in detail. It's a multi-step process that involves the school committee, selectmen, and as well as a town meeting vote. And I think the last one we'll do tonight is Jerry Potts from 7 Curve Street on September 13th. He wrote, the SBC said that both schools would be excellent. The teachers were not involved before the site selection. Dr. Marsden was clear about that at town meeting. They have been deeply involved since the selection, which they would have also if it was Dale. So the answer to that is the involvement of the teachers and how both fits the educational plan were discussed by the Warrant Committee meeting on September 8th and on the 29th. And the reference to Dr. Marsden speaking at town meeting, that video is available on the Medfield TV website, has the town meeting. The question that was asked of Dr. Marsden appears at about 3 hours and 48 minutes in. And so people can hear the question and the answer. The question asked whether or not the educational subcommittee met, and his answer was that it did not, but then went on to say that the teachers did work with the design team over several meetings. In the conversation we held on the 29th, the teachers detailed their involvement in visioning sessions with Arrow Street. So given the answers to both of those, we think that they are two different things, that there was a subcommittee, and then there were also these other working sessions, given the differing answers. So with that being said, it's 9:03.
We should mark where we stopped here. maybe.
Yeah, yes, so we stopped
Page 26.
page 26.
MSB progress.
26 and 65 days.
Yeah.
Okay.
We got a little start.
Well, I was gonna say, we did get a late start. We will start at 7 the next time, and some of these next ones that have very long questions that we're preparing analysis for anyway, so hopefully it won't take as long the next time. So as I said, if anybody has any comments or questions about what we read or anything that is brought up as further questions, please send it to the warrant committee at medfield.net, and we'll make sure we get those covered on the 14th. So we'll meet again on the 12th for the water meeting. That's a subcommittee meeting. So if you can come, great. If you can't, that's fine. Then we'll all meet on the 14th, and then we can talk about this on the 14th, but I'm a little inclined on the 14th to stay until we finish, because I think that we all deserve a week off and not a meeting the next week.
Amen to that.
So I think that that's what we'll try to do. So
I've been able to read it.
I think we are, well,
You noted that the deadline for new questions to be.
is, yeah, right. It will be on Thursday. And so looking at my calendar, that would be by end of day on October 7th. So, okay. Do you want to make your favorite motion?
to adjourn.
Okay, all right, Jeremy. Yes.
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 Jill, would you like to vote?
Yes.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Bye.
Government service.
Hard to remember when we did this.